This is Boomer Time, a proactive podcast for baby boomers, about baby boomers, and for people taking care of baby boomers. If that sounds like you, then you're in the right place. I'm Nancy Kogar, an elder law attorney and aging advocate, and this podcast was made just for you. Remember, though, the things we discuss here are not intended to be legal advice, and no attorney-client relationship is established by this podcast. Hello, my friends. This is Nancy Kogar, and this is Boomer Time. I'm so glad you've joined me. And as you know, this podcast is dedicated to talking about all issues related to aging. So as I say, it's about boomers, and for people taking care of boomers. I am an estate planning and elder law attorney here in Tennessee, and I have seen too many people totally unprepared for the issues that come with aging. So that's why I created this podcast, to get that information and those resources in your hands so you can plan correctly. So with that, welcome to Boomer Time. And if you are a boomer or caring for a boomer, you are in the right place, because that's what we talk about here. So this episode, we have another special guest joining me here on the podcast. I'm so excited for him to be here. Please welcome my friend and my colleague, fellow estate planning and elder law attorney, Drew Clements.
Thank you so much, Nancy. It's so good to be here, and I am over the moon to be here. This is wonderful. I
am really happy that you're here, because I just admire so much of what you do, and I know that you're passionate about what you do. That's important to get that out there. So also, I talk about community on the podcast, and we're part of the same community, because you're right down Shallowford Road, and I'm here on Jordan Drive. So people need to know that attorneys work together. We're not fighting all the time.
We're not at each other's throats. We love working together.
Yeah. And you and I have had a number of cases together. And I do love working with you. And we refer clients back and forth. We have different specialties. We have different temperaments at times. We have different schedules, right? So
that's right. I think working at all hours, it's been nice to be able to refer to each other and definitely bounce ideas off of each other as well.
Yeah. And that's what I want people to know is, we rely on each other. So this is a community when we're trying to advocate for older people, and, we're not operating in silos. We're working together. So.
And it's a friendly bar, and I think we all enjoy seeing a job well done and taking care of families.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I know that's what you're passionate about. Actually, I took a peek at I think it was your LinkedIn.
Oh my, there's no telling what you found there.
But it said that you like planning for what you called life's uncertainties.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's definitely true. I mean, we don't know what the future holds. So
that's right.
Yeah. And I talk a lot on the show about the importance of planning. And I know that you share that too, to especially have the right and specific estate planning in place. And that's why I wanted you here today, because you spend a lot of time and are fairly passionate about long-term care planning.
That's right. A lot of folks don't know that there's just a looming giant waiting to kind of wail on you in funding a long-term care stay. Mm-hmm. If you can't provide for yourself, or your family just doesn't have the time and resources necessary for some of that.
Yeah, because, they're just people like we are. And, you've got people that find themselves in a position as caregiver, and maybe they're not equipped to do that. That's another uncertainty. So
I find oftentimes it's not because the family doesn't want to be able to help. It's just, it's not feasible. I can't be a full-time caregiver and still provide for my own immediate family.
Yeah. So when you're looking at that professional long-term care, people always kind of have sticker shock when I tell them, well, that could cost $100,000 easy in 1 year. So
certainly.
Yeah, it requires a lot of planning.
A lot of planning, and there's a lot of information. There's a lot of misinformation out there.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about that today because I think that's really helpful for people. We are specifically going to talk today about something called Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, and that's a mouthful, but I think you can kind of tell, based on the title, what it is. Medicaid is specifically for most of the time nursing home, long-term care like that.
Right. Different from Medicare. I think people often get that confused.
Yeah.
But this is long-term support, not your general health insurance or a short-term stint in a healthcare facility.
Yeah. And so you've got older people that may be facing nursing home care, and if they're not planning accordingly, then I would think that there's not a plan in place as far as how to pay for it, but how do you make that money last? Because there's a whole eligibility issue that I want to talk with you about.
Definitely. And I think you and I are both concerned with how do you stretch that dollar, because these folks have busted their butts their whole life to get where they are. It sure would be great to be able to leave some of that to the family. Mm-hmm. But then again, some folks say, look, it's my money. I'm going to do with it what I want.
Right.
But we want to be able to help folks have that autonomy while still making those decisions up front.
And the other piece of the pie, too, is I see so many people that think they're doing the right thing, and then they totally screw things up, right? They just make they transfer away some asset, and we've got a big problem. And that ends up costing them more because they're thinking they're helping themselves, and they should sit down with someone like you or someone like me or someone similar and really listen to how this works. So.
Certainly. And to the extent that we're able to help them, that's what we're here for.
Yeah. Well, when we come back, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I'm not going to talk so much. So I'm interested in hearing what you have to say, because I don't do these as much as you do, actually. So I'm looking forward to having you share kind of the specifics of it, the details, the cautionary tales, and the pros and cons, so people have a good idea of if they're going to consider a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. They need to know those things before moving forward. So anyway, you're going to stick with me?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having me again, and I'm looking forward to talking about all this.
Good. All right. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Boomer Time. This is Nancy Kogar, and joining me today is my friend and fellow attorney, estate planning attorney, and elder law attorney, Drew Clements.
Good to be here. Thank you so much for having me again.
So, Drew, we're talking about Medicaid, and we're talking about Medicaid Asset Protection Trust. So this is a real complex area, but I want to make sure, you and I were talking, want to make sure that we kind of lead people the right way so that they understand exactly what we're talking about. So, and I think you're right in saying, when you turn 65, everybody knows you get Medicare, but that's not what we're talking about here. Tell me and share kind of what the difference is between Medicare and Medicaid.
Right. So most people are familiar with Medicare. You turn 65, you've got some healthcare coverage through Medicare. Medicare is also going to help you out on a short stint in a healthcare facility, typically up to 30 days, give or take. And it will kind of roll off over the next 60 days after that on a kind of sliding scale. Medicaid is for long-term care and support in a healthcare facility where you are going to need skilled nursing routinely, day in, day out. This is for the long term.
Right.
So it is something you have to be eligible for. You don't get it just because you turn 65.
Yeah.
There are income limits. There are asset limits. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. But basically its purpose to help pay for your healthcare expenses and needs for the long term. And oftentimes we're talking about that in the context of being in a nursing home. In Tennessee, TennCare is Tennessee's Medicaid.
Right.
So on TennCare, Choices is the program that we're talking about for Medicaid. There are 3 different choices, and it goes from a nursing home to just having some help at home. And there's a whole variety of different coverage there. But most of the time when we're talking about an asset protection trust, we're talking about qualifying for Medicaid to be in a nursing home.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's important too, because that can be very expensive.
Extremely. These are often nice places, sometimes not so nice places, but they generally cost around $8,000 a month on the lighter side. And you can see very quickly where any sort of long-term stay in this facility, you're going to liquidate a lot of your wealth that you've built up over the course of your life. And there's a dozen different strategies and planning options available to folks who can see that and predict that on the horizon.
Right.
There's also plenty of options for folks where it's an immediate need as well. But sometimes a asset protection trust may not be the best thing for that, for an immediate need.
Right, right. And you touched on this, but I just want to make sure this is clear to folks. So when we get to a Medicaid standpoint, you may not be eligible for Medicaid. That means it's going to get taken out of your pocket unless you can't pay for it and you show you meet the criteria for where you need to be as far as that income and assets. This is not going to be something that you're eligible for.
Right. Oftentimes you're going to need to do what we call private pay, just pay your own bills until you are eligible for this program. Medicaid looks at your income levels, which update yearly. Right now, the monthly income limit for a single individual is $2,829 a month in income. In your asset limitation, the amount of stuff you can have has to be less than $2,000.
Yeah.
Most of us, if we're doing life right, have a little over $2,000. But that's where the planning comes in on how you become eligible and what is going to be a countable resource versus a not accountable resource. And I'm sure we'll dive into that here in a moment.
Yeah. And to me, it's just so counterintuitive. And when I have somebody that's planning with a longer term, I'm thinking, if you can plan not to be in a nursing home, that's always the best way to be. But that does not always work for everyone. So, like you said, most people have accumulated over their lifetime more than $2,000 in assets.
Right. And that's where, the earlier you can get ahead of this, the more options that are available to you. There's great insurance coverage on that if you qualify. It can also be a little expensive. There's also, the whole plan to die young or plan to die or kind of age with your family around to support you.
Right.
A lot of rural counties is just, well, of course mom's going to move in with me. We're going to take good care of her. Sometimes that's a winning strategy. Sometimes it's not.
Right.
You and I both believe in planning ahead quite a bit. And I don't know that we recommend that.
Yes. So just like it sounds, if you're looking at Medicaid eligibility, when you hear about a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust, it's really kind of doing just that. And it's completely permissible. It's not something you're not allowed to do. You just need the time to do it.
Right. I get clients all the time who say, is this legal? This feels sneaky. And this is baked into the rules and the laws that we have of you're supposed to be doing something like this. If you've got the foresight to make this plan, that's what it's there for. And we keep talking about timing. There is a 60-month look back period where the state would be looking over your transfers over the past 5 years to see whether you're giving stuff away or whether you've made dispositions, because when it comes down to it, the government wants to know why are we paying for your medical expenses instead of you?
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any reason that you have impoverished yourself, so to speak, by gifting away stuff or giving away stuff, government's going to take a hard look at that, and you might have a penalty period over a course of months where you would be ineligible. And all that means, it sounds terrible, but all it means is you're just privately paying those expenses until you are eligible.
Right. The other piece of this, I think, is, many of us are married, and, not only are we aging, but our spouse is aging, right? So there's the issue of if one's sick, what happens to the other one that's at home, or what happens to them when they need help.
Right. And this kind of trust is perfect for that couple.
Mm-hmm.
In the industry, we kind of differentiate between the community spouse or the well spouse. That's the spouse that doesn't need this kind of long-term care, and the ill spouse, or maybe the institutionalized spouse, the person that's in that healthcare facility. There are different income levels for single individuals versus married individuals. For 2024, right now, the income limit for a couple is $5,658 a month. And there's also, obviously, you've got two individuals, it's $2,000 per spouse, so you've got a $4,000 asset limit. Although there's also special limitations for that as well.
Yeah, that's why they need to come see you.
It can get very complicated. But yes, this kind of trust is great for planning with that well spouse, or the spouse that's still at home, and being able to protect some assets, because there's kind of two phases of TennCare and Medicaid eligibility. Of course, it's great to get on TennCare and Medicaid, and it's great to be eligible. They're paying for your stay. But oftentimes after you pass, there is what's known as a state recovery, where the state wants to be reimbursed for the amount of expenses that they've put towards that healthcare stay. So if you can plan ahead and see the long view and plan for a state recovery on the front end, you can protect those assets not only to become Medicaid eligible, but also protect those assets for your family and your children, and kind of the next in line as well. Yeah,
and I've seen, probate is where you'd go after that, and I've seen some pretty hefty recovery bills.
Right. So TennCare's got great attorneys that are very vigilant. When people pass away, they'll file a claim against the probate estate, and they'll want to be paid.
Yeah, they have to. So, and that makes sense too.
I think it's basic fairness. But it's also where you get some good legal planning with one of us, and you can make sure to avoid that if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and then I thought maybe we'd go through the mechanics of how one of those trusts works. We will be right back, and I hope you're enjoying this, because this is important stuff, folks. So, Drew, I know this is pretty complex. So, we're not going to be able to go over everything today, but I do think it's important. You and I mentioned this, that there are certain assets that are countable, and then ones that aren't countable in the factor of whether you qualify. But that's something they need to talk to you about, or me, or whoever, a lawyer that understands these kind of issues.
Right. I think it makes sense to find someone with a good knowledge base on this. But Medicaid is looking at what resources they would expect you to liquidate before you're on the government dime again.
Right.
Your residence is typically not a countable resource.
Right.
There is a equity limit. I want to say it's
I think it's like
600,000. Yeah. I think if you've got equity over that, they'd be counting the excess
or something like that.
Yeah. Your automobile is typically not countable, and funeral trusts or funeral plans aren't really countable. Most everything else, with a few exceptions, is going to be countable. So that's where, again, your residence would be a great thing to put in a trust here. Not because you need to get rid of it, because again, it's not countable, but it's for that estate recovery,
Right.
playing the long game there. IRAs are a big one that you wouldn't want to put into a trust like this. Right. There's a lot of tax complications.
Any kind of trust, really.
Really. Yeah, exactly. But, if you're going to be spending down, so if you're playing the 5-year plan for that 60-month look-back period, you might want to put some major assets in a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust and keep a few things out that we might spend this off in the next 5 years and spend this down or liquidate it and use it. But for a Medicaid Asset Protection Trust like this, it's important to note that it is irrevocable.
Right. I was going to ask you about that. So what does that mean?
So irrevocable means exactly what it says. You can't change this. It is a treasure chest. It is a lockbox. So whatever you're putting into this trust, it is now locked up. It is inaccessible to you. Some trust, it can be by you, for you, and you run the show. This is not that trust. This is by you, for you during your lifetime, but someone else is running the show. So you are relinquishing control. Oftentimes your trustee is typically going to be a child or a close family friend, someone who's going to take care of you during your lifetime. But your beneficiaries at your death are really who benefit from a lot of this planning. Right. That's where you're getting into that estate recovery. You, of course, would want to have an occupancy provision for your home. Make sure it's your home. You should certainly be living in it still. And you could live off the income from your trust there. If it's over the income limit for Medicaid, there's ways to deal with that as well. Right. But you're going to have income coming off of that potentially. So it's a lockbox, but there's also some wiggle room.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the planning, I think, is
right.
And,
I think
and
at
it
its
needs
core,
to be. The details matter.
The details do matter. And when you come see me, I've tried to trim down my questionnaire quite a bit, but it can get a little lengthy because the details do matter.
Tell me about that too. What's the process look like when they contact you?
So contacting me, I want to have a friendly face, obviously, and meet with people.
You have a very friendly face.
Well, thank you. A face for podcasting, right?
No, when I get the video out here.
But a short 2-page questionnaire just of getting to know you. Let's have a meeting and talk about everything and talk about your goals. I am very goal-oriented.
Me too.
You may get advice from your barber that says you need a trust, but I want to know, why do you need this trust? Do you need this trust because you found this on Google, or do you have a specific goal or intention behind it? Because there's a whole galaxy of different trusts, each with its own purpose. So I want to focus on you and your family and what your needs are. After that, I'm going to have a longer form questionnaire, and we're going to look into title. How are things titled? What's the value there? What do we expect for you to spend over the next little while? Do you have an estate plan in place? Or are we starting from the ground up? You need a will. Maybe you probably want powers of attorney. Do you have funeral planning? Do you have a nice little notepad with all of your usernames and passwords and who to call for an emergency? I want to know that kind of stuff. So meeting with folks, it is very much you focused, not me focused. And we'll kind of run from there. And there's a dozen different strategies on how to address these issues. It's just a matter of what makes the most sense for your family. Your loved one's health is going to be the biggest thing, because when you're playing the long game like this, you've got to have a very realistic expectation of, can that person live on their own independently for over 5 years? Can they live on their own during a spin down period when we need to work on qualifying for eligibility? There's just so many specifics. It's very detail oriented and very case by case. Things change.
It's like when you get one of those calls and someone says, I just need a 5-minute quick simple answer. You've gotten one of these where they say, how can I keep my assets from being
it's
no,
funny.
It's not that simple.
Cool, because I think you and I usually end up asking more questions of them than they're asking of us.
And then they say, oh, see, it isn't that simple.
you can get in the weeds very easily on this.
Mhm.
I think that's very evident.
Mhm.
But that's where working with good, knowledgeable people who have a heart to help
Mhm.
is huge.
Mhm.
That's the whole name of the game for both of us. Is we
Right.
want to be a good resource. Um, I pride myself on being responsive.
Yeah.
At my firm, I want you to get a response within 24 hours, if not immediately before then.
Yeah.
I want to be a good resource because you need these questions answered when you're making these decisions.
Mhm.
We were talking about knee-jerk decisions on retitling stuff, and
Quit claim deeds.
oh,
No.
I know. Let's have capital gains tax. It'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I want to be responsive. I'm the guy where I go out to a restaurant. I want the wait staff to dote on me and love on me and make me
Mhm.
feel like the man of the house, even though
Mhm.
I'm just some schmuck. But that's the kind of service I want to bring to my
Yeah.
clients. Is I want to be attentive to your needs. I want to be
Me.
responsive, like I said.
Yeah, and then that's where you and I are just really evenly yoked in that way, because when people come in, they call it a consultation, but I call it a strategy session,
Hmm.
because we're sitting there, we're getting to know each other. And one thing may work for one person and then not work for another. They have different risk tolerances. Some people don't want to lose control of assets. Others don't have family members that they can trust necessarily. And then there may be someone that just is in crisis over some significant health, you know, diagnosis, and then they don't even know something like this exists. They've spent their whole life trying to accumulate assets, and now they're concerned that they're not going to be able to, afford their care.
Right. This is your classic retirement scenario. Have you worked long enough to where all of your money is going to outlive you,
Right.
or are you going to outlive your money?
Right.
And I think we should say this Medicaid Asset Protection Trust is probably not the best tool for immediate eligibility and immediately qualifying. There's plenty of other strategies for that.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, I think people need to know that we're out here and we can help.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So I am so glad that you came to see me today.
Me too.
Yeah.
This has been wonderful.
And you live right around the corner, so you're my neighbor.
That's it. Yes. I am a phone call away.
Yeah. And we're going to hopefully do this again. And I do admire your practice. And I want to tell folks too that you've taken such a leadership role too in the state of Tennessee, that you are now, not to embarrass you, but you are now incoming leadership for the Bar Association, and helping to craft legislation that could impact people in this area.
Yes, it's very exciting. There's a lot of people much, much smarter than me involved. I got voluntold that I'm going to be leading the executive council for the elder law section for the Tennessee Bar Association. So very big honor. I hope that I measure up and make everyone proud. But yes.
Oh, I know you're going to do great. So.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, so, and as I've told you, I do end these programs with a little bit of encouragement, because there are two issues here. I want to build community. Caregiving, I'm sure you would agree with me, can be really isolating. So if you're at home aging and not well, that can be isolating. So I want people to know that they're not alone, and these resources are available for them, so that they can learn a little bit more about the help that's available to them.
Definitely. And I think it's hokey, but knowledge is power.
Yes.
The more that you know about it, the better you can approach this stuff. And to speak it to the isolation and the loneliness, I am more than happy to make house calls and come see people.
Me too, yeah.
I think we both have a heart for folks, and if you can't come see me, be happy to come see you.
Yeah. Just takes planning.
Yes. Plan ahead. Make sure we get on each other's calendars.
Yes. Yes.
But yes.
So, and I don't want to forget. So I know how to get in touch with you, but how can someone reach you?
Yes. So ClementsLawFirm.com is my website. And I am always a quick email away. It's Drew, that's DREW, at Clements, CLEMENTS, lawfirm, LAWFIRM.com. or reach us at our main number. It is 423-713-7749. Like I said, we would love to meet with you and treat you with that attentive care that you deserve.
And I know you will, because I've seen you do it. So,
well, thank you very much.
And I hope you will come back.
I am going to be lurking in the bushes every Friday, just jazzed to get back here.
Okay.
So please have me back.
Good. Excellent. And your father is also an attorney, so...
That's right. We should get him on here and poke his brain.
Yeah, grill him. No. Okay. Well, I hope everyone has found this helpful today. As we've stressed, this is a very complex area of the law, and it requires an attorney with knowledge and expertise in this area, obviously. I encourage you to consider this, and if you do, please contact Drew, because it requires that. As you know, I am a person of faith. I believe Drew is a person of faith as well. And that is an important part of this too, because I know it can be discouraging to be in these circumstances. And just want to encourage you today that we are doing this because we care about you. And we want to have these resources in your hands, and aging is tough enough, so we don't want you aging alone.
No, and we sympathize. Everyone's got their grandparents that they love, and I think everyone can easily see themselves in this place of having those needs and having a desire to see people succeed. Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. Absolutely. Well, and if you go to the website, I will have some information on Drew there at nancykogar.com, so you can get in touch with him that way. And you can also subscribe to our podcast there, Boomer Time. And if you're interested in our newsletter, I think you know about the newsletter too. Elder Law News you can use. The monthly newsletter. Always good stuff in there. I'm always learning things when I read that. So that's there for you. What else? All kinds of stuff. So there is no reason you can't get some info. So, and with that, I would say thank you very much, Mr. Drew. Thank you very much, Miss Nancy, for having me. It has been an absolute pleasure. Well, you've brightened my day. So. Likewise. Yeah. Everybody out there, I hope that this has been helpful, as I've said, and stay tuned next time. We will have another issue that will help you in this aging game, right? So we will see you next time, okay? Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.